Today we're looking at Private Reserve's Daphne Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Private Reserve's Daphne Blue is, like it sounds, a blue ink, but it's actually a very light blue ink, very kind of nice as a tone. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for day. I then put it into a Nemesine Singularity to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, I put it immediately into water, and I let it sit there for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this flees from the bottom of the page. There is a tiniest bit of this very light blue at the bottom. We get this kind of minty color, and then the light blue comes in and a darker blue across the top. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And it looks the same. There's no difference. I cover the top with my thumb and you would not be able to tell the difference between the two. Which means I expect no hold on, no resistance whatsoever for this ink. Resistance? Yes, resistance. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it said, ew, don't do it. It doesn't like highlighter. Keep the highlighter away. If this ink misbehaves, threaten it with a highlighter because it's afraid of it. It runs all over and you can't read it. Which gives us results that we rather expect later on. When we look at water, just a drop with 30 seconds is almost entirely removing it from the page. It's almost all gone. It's the lightest blue left behind. I see the dots of the Rhodia pad left. Pen Flush did very much the same thing, removed a little bit more of it. The interesting is that weird purple spot that came with the Pen Flush, but that's not in the chromatography and that's not anything about removing this. I would just think only water's needed to remove this from the page. Bleach did what was expected, which is to completely remove it from the page. It's gone, it's obliterated, out of there. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Private Reserve's Daphne Blue has a viscosity of Private Reserve's Daphne Blue has a viscosity of 2.3, which makes it normal. It's a perfectly normal flowing ink. To find my average writing times, I use my extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the writing samples. Private Reserve's Daphne Blue has an average dry time of 12 seconds, which makes it a faster drying ink. Not a fast drying ink, but definitely a faster drying ink. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I got this ink in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Color variation, nice shading in the 1.1. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and again shading. Tons of shading all the way through all of this writing, 9 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and tons of shading, 13 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us that we're going to get color variation, and we do. Because this is such a light ink, while the medium, I see most of it because it seems to have left the top. The extra fine doesn't. I really don't think you would be able to recover this just because it's such a light shade. So Tomoe River, other than where I put it on really stupid thick, we get no bleeding, we do get ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 14 seconds to dry. Medium No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Yes, shading. Very nice shading in here, which is always a surprise on Tomoe River. 22 seconds to dry. Now, the extra fine, we see no color variation in the scrubby, but we do see it in the medium, and that's exactly the way it performed in the writing. Smear test, you wouldn't be able to recover this. So we look at Rhodia paper, where we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, little bits of color variation. It's very gentle, the color variation it's there. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and some color variation. It's nice. It's a very subtle amount of color variation. You definitely see it when we look from the 6 to the seconds. You see it on the brown. On the BR is darker than the WN. The K in quick is much darker. In lazy, on the bottom of the Z and the Y, it's much lighter. Very nice. 6 seconds to dry. Medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. And yes, plenty of color variation all over it. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubbies for both show us we're going to get color variation, and we do get plenty of color variation. And the smear test, you might be able to recover it, the biggest issue being how light this color is. So I took my notes with a Lamy Al-Star 1.1, and this performs great with stubs. To me, this ink goes in a stub because it does so well. The color variation that I'm getting this whole way through, very nice stuff. I tested it on Apica paper. Now the bleeding only occurs where I'm putting it on stupid thick with the scrubby. Other than that, we have no bleed and no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we do get some color variation. Quite a bit through the 1.1. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. And yes, we do get shading. Again, all through the writing. Very consistent amount of shading going on. 5 seconds to dry. Medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and crazy shading. Really good. I wish it wasn't so light and ink. See, if it wasn't so light, it would be easier to see on camera. It's just tough to see on camera, this super light shade of blue. In both this extra fine and the medium scrubby, we see color variation, and we did see color variation in the writing. The smear test, you might be able to recover this. I see those lines pretty well. My concern is it being a very light blue. So I looked at Fabriano Eco Qua. Again, the only bleed spot is where I'm putting it on stupid thick. Other than that, we have no bleed and no ghosting. Very nice paper. Vita introduced me to this paper in her videos. I wound up having to try it, and it is fantastic. The only problem I have with it is it's very expensive, but it's worth it. When you want to use a very nice paper, this is truly worth it. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, little bits of color variation. It's subtle. It's very gentle transitions into darker. So on the Daphne, on the N to E, it gets a little darker, and we get to see it nice there. Same with Private. The A to T gets a little darker, and we get to see it there. The I to V gets a little lighter. So it's there. It's just harder to see because it's light, and it's still going to a light tone. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Less color variation to be spotted than we see in the 1.1 or than we will see in the medium. It's there. It's just really hard to see. We see it in quick up to the K. We see it in brown down from the B. We see it in Fox where it starts darker, gets a little lighter, and gets a little darker again. 5 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Great shading. Really standout shading. I find this paper does especially well with broader, wetter nibs, and it really brings out those qualities in the ink. It doesn't do justice to what the paper does with the ink when it's a drier or smaller nib. 9 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both show us color variation, and all of that color variation we see in the writing sample. The smear test,
Again, I think you'd be able to recover it other than the fact of how light an ink this is. So then I tested Mnemosyne, and that spot is just where I'm putting it on stupid thick with the scrubby. Other than that, we have no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Color variation. Very nice color variation. It's really pretty to see, looking at the Daphne, how it just gets lighter through the H into the N. Gets darker back into the E. When I can see the color variation in one word going on, it's great. I see it in the Reserve. The R starts light, gets darker, gets lighter again into the ES and the E before the R gets darker, but the R gets lighter. I really enjoy when that happens. I really have an appreciation for that. The Extra Fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and yes, tons of shading all over it with 6 seconds to dry. Medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and yes, once again, shading all over the place. All over the place. This is a shade monster. It's great, and it's a very gentle looking blue. Very light on the eyes. There's nothing bold about this color, but it is very, very nice in just like how gentle it is. A lot of times you see blues where people go and they want it screaming. Very gentle. 13 seconds. The Extra Fine and the Medium Scrubby both show us that we're going to get color variation, and we do, just like we see in the Scrubby in both writing samples. And the smear, I'm not sure that you'd be able to recover that if you smear it while you're writing. So that's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Private Reserve's Daphne Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Being a very light blue, I thought about something a bit darker, and I went with Krishna's Brown Pink, because while it says brown pink, it's kind of a red-brown color. It's very nice. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Private Reserve's Daphne Blue? It makes me want to fight crime. Just go to all my friends together in a van and go solve mysteries or something. That aside, it's a very nice blue. It shades very well. Can you find shading anywhere? Yes, you can. This is a really good blue ink. Consistency is the key to this particular ink. It's very consistent and very nice. Thanks for watching.